Okay, Chapter 7, Cost, Volume, Profit Analysis. This is part 1 of 5, and this first section talks about the contribution margin. Okay, that first button's a killer. Okay, we've got 5 learning objectives here. The first thing that we'll look at is calculating a unit contribution margin, okay, and a contribution margin ratio. And that's what we'll look at in this first presentation. Then we use it to find break even. We'll measure the impact of changing conditions using cost, volume, profit analysis. Then we'll find break even and target volumes, and then we've got some ratios at the end that you'll need to know. So first, we're going to calculate the unit contribution margin and the contribution margin ratio. Now, cost, volume, profit is really, to me, it's the best part of all the tools that you'll learn in 2071. It is really key to helping you make decisions because it expresses relationships among costs, volumes, and company's profit. It answers questions like, well, if I want to earn $10,000 this month, what do I have to sell? Okay, and what we do is we divide our costs up between what's fixed and what's variable. We assume some relationships, and then we can determine all kinds of things. So the last piece on here is that cost, volume, profit helps you determine how many sales you need to break even. Okay, and then what if you've got a target profit, like that 10,000. But break even is a really important thing to know, like, well, how much do I have to sell every month just to cover my fixed costs? So what the elements that are in here are, first of all, the selling price, volume, number that we sell, the cost, okay, what our fixed costs are, monthly website, maintenance and rent, that's what this is for a flyer, and then we can figure out operating income. Okay, so volume is really important, an important piece of this. And we take our costs and we have to break them down between variable and fixed. Now, cost, volume, profit has some assumptions that are actually pretty tight, but you've got, you've got some variance. Like even if you come up with an estimated cost, volume, profit analysis, you can be, pretty confident. You should have some confidence level that your numbers are pretty good. At least they're in the ballpark. But this would assume that the sales price remains constant through the relevant range. But managers can actually classify costs as variable or fixed. Okay, you might have to take a mixed cost and pull it apart. That inventory levels do not change, and that the hard one is that the product mix offered for sale remains constant. That's the one that's the tricky one, okay, because the mix changes. But that's what we've got to assume. Now, a contribution margin is your sales revenue minus variable costs. So we're going to say sales minus variable cost is the contribution margin. Okay, so sales minus variable cost is your contribution margin. And the neat thing about it is that since with our assumptions, we assume that the relationship between these three stays the same. So if sales are 100% and variable cost is 60%, then your contribution margin is 40%. Okay, so we could take the total contribution margin, divide it by the number of units, okay, and get our contribution margin per unit. And what we do is we include both product and period costs in this variable cost. So it's not just variable cost of goods sold. So you can think of it as manufacturing and non-manufacturing. Okay? All right. So we'll work with this a lot so that it gets in your head. Now here's an example, the unit contribution margin example. These are Kay's posters, and Kay has an online poster business. She currently sells each poster for $35. Each poster has a variable cost of $21. Kay has monthly fixed costs of $7,000. Her relevant range is 0 to 2,000, and she's currently selling 550. Generally, you're not going to have to worry about the relevant range, okay? It'll be in there, so you just know in the beginning that it's got to be within the range of before you need another plant or more fixed costs. Now here's an example. Here is what we call a contribution margin income statement. We've broken or reorganized our costs so that all of our variable costs are up on top. We've classified it by cost behavior, okay? So variable costs are on the top, and then fixed costs are on the bottom. And we've got sales revenue less variable expenses gives us a contribution margin. And think of that contribution as a contribution to cover your fixed costs. Okay, so we've got $700 more. We made a whopping $700 this month. Okay, so we've got to do something. You've either got to cut your costs, increase your volume, or raise your price in order to increase this operating income. So here is the unit contribution margin. If you've got a selling price of $35 and your variable cost per unit is 21, your unit contribution margin is $14. So every time she sells a poster, she makes $14, and this contributes to covering the costs for your expenses and also to help earn a profit. Okay. And here is the ratio of the contribution margin to sales revenue. I can take my unit contribution margin and divide it by the selling price per unit and get the contribution margin ratio. Okay, I'm going to show you like a different way to look at this. Okay, now this is a really handy format that I'd like you to use whenever you've got CVP problems. All right, and it takes, because the thing of it is, once you've got this structure down, if you're not given one of these values, you'll be able to figure it out based on what something else is. Okay, and not that that happens in exams or anything, but it might be a handy thing to know. So we have sales less variable costs is your contribution margin, less fixed costs is operating income. And I've got numbers here in total. All right, these are the same numbers from the example. And there's the per unit selling price and cost and contribution margin, and then this percent. And what makes this so handy is that the proportions here stay the same, so that if we increase our volume, all right, the per unit cost doesn't change and the percent doesn't change. We would increase variable costs at the same time. Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to tell you, I want to put a line in here. I don't want you to use this piece at all. Okay, this should always be blank. So leave this alone because you can't do anything per unit with the fixed costs. Okay, you can't do anything per unit with the fixed cost. So the fixed are fixed. No matter what the volume is, that fixed cost stays the same. Okay, and what else did I wanted to tell you? Oh, that sales are 100%. Okay, so if your cost percentage is 60%, then your contribution margin is 40. If you know that your contribution margin is 40%, sales have to be 100%, so your costs have to be 60. Okay, I can't encourage you enough to use this format. You can just say sales less VC is CM minus FC is OI. You know, have a quick heading over here, but if you use this, it'll save you on a lot of different problems. Okay.